because there are a few thousand data sheets out in the game.
Wow! Welcome back to the Real Ones Go Festa. Old Big Mek here, and it's time we talk about more rules! My least favorite thing. Let's get into it! Alright, for those of you that have been living under a rock for the last year and a half, welcome to Warhammer 40,000 10th and a half edition. Basically, Warhammer 40k, our beloved tabletop game, goes through a new edition every once in a while where they kind of revamp the base rules and go from there. Some of those editions aren't as big of a redo as others. Basically, it's a continuation of the rules that are already there, a little tweaking. You keep all the same codexes that are in effect. Those would be your books full of army rules. And sometimes you get a complete blank slate reset. And 10th edition was one of those huge blank slate resets. Now, I'm not saying it wasn't needed. 9th was pretty bloated, and the end there got kind of really crazy, especially with all these different detachments you could do where you could kind of bring kind of whatever you wanted with no real downsides. It got to be a little bit much, and the index when 10th first dropped was actually pretty decent. The problem has been since then. 10th edition when it started and 10th edition today are not the same game at all. In fact, I have ranted about this quite a bit. The FAQ and the index errata and the rules commentary documents are more than twice the size of the actual core rules. And none of the core rules, not one single page in the 10th edition rulebook that you got in your Leviathan box is actually still the same. That's why we call it 10th and a half or 10.5. It is a completely different game. Things like Pivot didn't even exist back when the rules were first written. The actual deployment zones have completely changed. Even those aren't the same. I mean, literally everything is different. I often derogatorily call 10th edition Magic the Gathering with extra steps, because all it is about power comboing things that come in these ridiculous data sheets for the rules. All that being said, this whole video is me being a little bit excited about the future of Warhammer 40k, specifically because of that guy right there. So that gentleman's name is Kenny, and he is the first interview on one of the new shows on Warhammer TV called That's How We Roll, or How We Roll, something like that. But basically, if you're a Warhammer Plus subscriber, there's these shows that you can go watch. It was supposed to be all about animation. We've gotten some good animation, don't get me wrong, that's a whole nother rant. But a lot of the animation, or a lot of the content, I should say, isn't actually animation. It is live in-person shows, which is okay. And they have tried a number of these shows, and some have worked and some have not, and some have actually been really good. The Lore Masters has been pretty decent. A lot of their painting shows are okay, but How We Roll is a brand new one where they're doing these deep dives on rule things. And so anyways, they interviewed Kenny about making a codex. But what's really interesting about this is Kenny is the new head of the rules. And when you watch and listen to this whole thing, and huge shout out to Warboss Dan for cluing me in on this. He actually watched it first, was talking to me about it. I made sure to go have time to watch it as well and see what he was talking about, and I agree with him. Kenny, he's only been with the company since after 10th edition launch, so he was not responsible for 10th at the start, and he really hasn't been responsible for anything up till now. He's been learning the ropes, figuring out how all the rules work, and it sounds like one of his first big things might have been the new Age of Sigmar rules, but he is the driving force behind the new Grotmus detachments, as well as the new Imperial Guard Codex is going to be his first codex start to finish. What's really, really, really exciting about all of this, especially for old Big Mek here, is that the statement was made that the balance of the game, like where they are focusing, is two dudes in their garage. And that's what we want. That's what old Big Mek wants. Yes, tournaments are there. Yes, tournaments are cool. Tournaments have their own rules, dude. Hello, I was at the Tacoma Open this year, and they had a completely different rule set than the rest of 40k because the tournament organizers have the latitude to do their own thing as well anyway. So if tournament organizers at the tip-top level are coming out with their own FAQs and rules commentary, what the heck is the point of catering to them when 90% of your Warhammer gaming done on a day-to-day basis are filthy, filthy casuals at home or at their friendly local game store with their mates having a good time, maybe over a couple of fungus beers? That's who you should be writing for. I shouldn't have to bring a rule book, a codex, an FAQ, a balanced data slate, an index, a summary, a rules commentary. This is ridiculous. This is all ridiculous, especially when there's an app that exists that you're supposed to be able to build your army lists on, but you can't actually use that to then go play the game because, like, when you look up core rules itself, there's an FAQ within the app that you go back and forth. The whole thing is just ridiculous. Look, man, I do accounting for my job. I don't want to do accounting when I sit down at the tabletop. I want to push my little armament around, go pew, 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 roll some dice, and have a good time. That's where the rules are going. I'm very, very, very excited to hear about that. I think that that is a fantastic direction to go, and that makes me really, really excited for the future of Warhammer 40K. Now, I know that there are 10th edition fans out there. I know that even locally, I got a lot of guys that like it. Warboss Ken and Warboss Tom and those guys, they all like 10th edition. They play, they understand everything. They're into it though, right? Like, if you are a semi-competitive player and you play at least once a week, it is a lot easier for you to stay up on the rules than someone like me that has the ability to maybe play one game a month. And the problem with only being able to play one game a month is that these games take 3-4 hours, especially if you don't know what the heck you're doing. Versus back in the day, like 3rd, 4th edition, you could knock out a 2,000 point game in an hour and a half max, because there wasn't that much rules bloat. So for someone like me, who I think actually does represent the vast majority of people that are into Warhammer, we've done a number of surveys about this, and most people that watch this channel don't actually play, and they feel like they can't play or can't play as well because of the rules bloat. So I know I'm not alone in these sentiments that I really want to play this game. I really want to love this game, but I want to be able to actually understand it and come to it and be able to play the game and not be overwhelmed by so many layers of special rules and not have the game take so long, but being bogged down by so many steps. And any changes made to make those things better, I think are going to improve gameplay across the board and make things better for everybody, competitive players included. I mean, let's be real here. You don't need to have this many rules and this many clarifications in order for a competitive game to be good. X-Wing the Miniatures game is a good example of this. When X-Wing the Miniatures game was really big on a tournament scene, the rules documents weren't that big. I want to say they were around 10, 12 pages total for everything with all the FAQs and the whatnots. I was a top 100 ranked player, okay? I actually know what I'm talking about here. I won a couple of store championships and placed top 10 at a couple of big tournaments and things like that. It was a great, great game because you could read all of the rules and be up on all of the interactions with not that much investment, and it was easy to understand. Things were very much as written and as intended were the same thing. And if there was something really, really broken, they came out and they fixed it, and they often like reprinted cards with the correction on them and everything. You know, there's ways to do competitive games that aren't crazy complicated with rules, that don't have so many supplements with them. Warhammer did it for literal decades. Again, old Big Mek here was competitive back in the day. In 2006, I won the Ard Boys regional tournament. That was, let's see, what, 5th edition? Yeah, 5th edition. 5th edition was great. You needed your rule books, you needed your rule book, your codex, and I think there was one FAQ document that you printed off that was like 2 or 3 pages of a PDF, and that was it, man. That was all of the rules. And the competitive scene was actually decent at the start of 5th. Things didn't get stupid till they came out with codexes that had, guess what, rules bloat, where they kept having things that changed. So, moving forward, I'm really looking forward to the rest of the Grotmus detachments. I've liked almost all of them. I really like their balance between being like actually useful on the tabletop and thematic. I mean, the Orc one was absolutely on point. We got all of this really cool dead sneaky stuff and all of this really cool Bad Moons DACA stuff. We got the return of Captain Badrock in everything but name. I mean, it's a really, really cool thematic detachment, but it's actually useful too. It might even be one of the best Orc detachments to take for all players just because it's actually useful and it doesn't lock you into these narrow paths and doesn't lock you into building these crazy super monsters, single squads that do all this crazy stuff. And really, that's been 10th and a half edition's problem. You've got, the Marnie's Calgar, Terminator Death Squad thing going on, where you put all those special characters together and they absolutely murderize everything in their path. You've got the Court of the Archon for Dark Eldar that, they could take on Angron and win, no problem, with all of these different random special rules all gummed up into this one package, this one squad. Even the orcs were like that. There was a hot minute where a whole bunch of Mega Armor Knobs and a Gazgul at front, and you were tearing through absolutely everything on the board until they rolled that one back a little bit. So it's been this thing that kind of like every army. Imperial Guard, you've got stupid Leonidas the Horse with the dummy on his back issuing orders to tanks, or at least he used to, that were causing all sorts of problems. So, getting away from these mono builds, these super power decks, these Magic the Gathering things with extra steps is just going to be a good thing. So, I'm really happy that I'm getting my Squigmas gift from Games Workshop into a better, more streamlined, easier to pick up game, hopefully with less rules bloat in it. Do you really need devastating hits and devastating wounds and rending, and how many different kinds of invulnerable saves do you need? There's like your regular save and your invulnerable save and your feel no pain save and your demon save, and why are we rolling the dice so many stinking times? Just let something die, it's okay. Back in the day in 3rd edition, it was hit, wound, armor, dead. That was it. And nothing had more than 1 damage. All damage was 1 damage. That was great. Why did we introduce extra damage into things? That every wound should be a wound. That's it. Like, if you want it to cause more damage, give it more shots. That's how we used to do it. If this gun was going to cause 3 times more damage than that gun, it just got to shoot 3 times. That makes a heck of a lot more sense than making all these extra steps of dice rolls and then going damage 3 at the end. It just... AP was another thing. Armor piercing, back in the day, if the armor piercing was better than the armor, it just went through, period. It didn't reduce it. You just straight up didn't get an armor save. It was armor piercing ammunition. That actually kind of made a lot more sense, and it made the weapons a lot more deadlier. Now you've got all these modifications to armor. You're like, oh, well, I'm shooting you with an AP -3 weapon, but you're like, oh, I'm in cover, so I get +1, and then I've got this order thingy here that gives me another +1, and so really, I'm just going from a 3+ to a 4+, and you're like, I just shot you in the face with a melt-a-gun. You should just die. You should just die. All right, I'm ranting. I'm going to rant. I'm just going to keep on ranting with this stuff, man. These rules interactions, these rules bloats have been so bad for the game on the casual level. I can absolutely tell you that. We talk about this in our Discord. I talk about it with people in real life all the dang time. There are so many of us that sit around and we build these things and we paint these things and we have them on our shelves, and maybe we'll play a game with our kids or something like that, but we're not actually going to play the real game because the real game is so bonkers right now, because it's so hard to keep up on, because there's so many rules interactions, because they've changed what those rules mean. Some of those, lethal hits or something like that, it's changed 3 or 4 times since 10th edition came out on what it literally defines. You buy all these index cards and they're literally out the door, sometimes even before they're printed. The orc ones were like that. Like, it's just dumb. So having somebody like Kenny on board now, who is being a rules head and is actually actively working to make this game work for 2 average people in their garage trying to have a good time in a couple hours or less, is absolutely what Warhammer needs to do to keep moving forward and to keep getting bigger. So I'm really excited about it. All right, that's enough ranting for today. Old Big Mek's blood pressure is going to go through the roof. He's going to pop a squig out of his forehead. So I'm going to take some calming action here and go paint some minis and hope that maybe, just maybe, I will actually be able to understand 10th edition enough to play a good game before the end of the year. We'll see. All right, until next time, one!